Ellis Crane looked me dead in the eye and said the 12 words that changed everything. Your team's punishment for excellence is mandatory Saturdays with no overtime pay. The silence in that break room felt like someone had shut down the main production line. My crew sat there, 12 faces staring at nothing, trying to process what our plant manager had just dropped on us. I kept my voice level, even though every instinct told me to explode. Let me make sure I understand this correctly. My team delivered 300% above safety targets this quarter. We eliminated workplace accidents completely for 8 straight months. We saved this plant $2.1 million through process improvements and equipment modifications, and our reward is mandatory 6-day work weeks with no premium pay. Ellis adjusted his tie, that cheap polyester thing he thought made him look important. His wedding ring caught the fluorescent light as he tapped his clipboard against the metal table. That's correct, Wade. Consider it a learning opportunity. Your team clearly has capacity we haven't been utilizing properly. My name is Wade Garrett, and at 48 years old, I've spent 22 years in manufacturing. Started on the floor at 26, worked my way up to senior operations director through sheer determination and keeping people safe. I've seen plenty of plant managers come and go, but Ellis Crane was something special. The kind of special that makes good workers quit and safety records mysteriously disappear. Ava Rodriguez, my quality control supervisor who'd missed her daughter's high school graduation to complete our biggest efficiency project, raised her hand like we were in some corporate classroom. I'm already putting in 55 hours a week, monitoring the new inspection protocols. How exactly am I supposed to add another 10 hours without compromising quality standards? Time management, Ellis replied without looking at her. Maybe fewer smoke breaks. That hit wrong. Ava hasn't touched a cigarette in 15 years, quit when her dad died of lung cancer. Everyone in the plant knows that story. Felix Thompson, my maintenance engineer who hasn't taken vacation in 3 years because he's too worried about equipment failures, pressed his palms against the table. This doesn't compute. Standard protocol rewards teams that exceed targets. We didn't just exceed, we revolutionized this plant's entire safety approach. 0 OSHA incidents, 0 worker compensation claims, 0 equipment downtime due to safety shutdowns. Ellis sighed like he was explaining basic arithmetic to children. Consider it a necessary adjustment for plant-wide morale. Your performance has created tensions with other departments. Second shift, supervisors are complaining about unrealistic expectations. Tensions, Nova Stevens, our safety coordinator, looked genuinely confused. We've been sharing our protocols with every department for months. Training sessions, documentation, equipment modifications, everything we've learned. You're making the other shifts look bad, Ellis said bluntly. Plant harmony matters more than standout performance. The board wants consistency across all operations. The decision is final. I watched my people deflate like hydraulic lines losing pressure. Knox Taylor, who'd worked double shifts when his dad was in the hospital, never missing a safety check. Daphne Brooks, who'd postponed knee surgery to finish implementing our new training program. Liv Murphy, who'd redesigned our entire materials handling system on her own time. All 12 faces showing the same crushing realization. Excellence was being systematically punished while they looked broken. Something clicked into place for me. Not anger, not frustration. Something colder, more mechanical, like when a bearing starts grinding and you know exactly what needs to be replaced. Everyone on my team, I said, standing up. My office. Now, Ellis raised an eyebrow. We're not finished here, Wade. We absolutely are. I gathered my safety reports without hurrying, each movement deliberate. You've made your position crystal clear. Now I need to speak with my crew. They followed me like a shift change procession, steel-toed boots echoing off the concrete floor. 22 years of footsteps just like these, walking from one crisis to another, always finding solutions. Once everyone squeezed into my small office, I closed the blinds and locked the door. Industrial privacy, the kind that keeps corporate ears out. Is this where you tell us to keep our heads down and take it? Ash Cooper asked, his voice flat as sheet metal. Because I'm not sure I have anything left to give. I've been running quality control on 3 different product lines since Jenkins retired. No, I said, leaning against my desk. This is where I tell you something that doesn't leave this room, something that's going to change how you see everything that just happened. 112 pairs of tired eyes focused on me. These weren't just employees, they were craftsmen, people who understood that manufacturing isn't about quotas and clipboards. It's about precision, reliability, and keeping people alive while making things that matter. 3 months ago, when we first started significantly outperforming safety targets, I received a private message from someone I'd never met. Tegan Walsh, the retired board chair. The room stirred like someone had just announced overtime pay. Tegan was legendary around here. The woman who'd built this company from a small family steel operation 30 years ago, back when American manufacturing meant something. Before corporate consultants and efficiency experts started treating workers like interchangeable parts. She noticed anomalies in our division's performance metrics and wanted to understand what was happening. Not in some boardroom presentation, but over coffee. Real conversation between people who understood what it means to build things. We met at that diner on Route 9, the one where all the contractors eat breakfast. She asked me a question I couldn't answer right away. Why does every high-performing team in this plant eventually get dismantled, reassigned, or held back? Remy Jackson straightened in his chair. You mean this has happened before? Multiple times, I said. Teams that innovate get broken up. Supervisors who exceed targets get moved to problem departments. Workers who suggest improvements get labeled as troublemakers. It's been happening for years, but nobody could prove it was systematic. So what did you tell her? Sage Williams asked. I told her I'd find out, and we designed a test. We were lab rats, Felix asked, his wrench-calloused hands gripping the chair arms. Strategic assets, I corrected. Tegan suspected that somewhere in middle management, innovation was being systematically crushed, but she needed proof, documentation, evidence that would hold up in a boardroom full of lawyers and accountants. So our amazing quarter was an experiment. Kira Martinez asked, her voice tightening. She'd been running equipment diagnostics on her own time, identifying problems before they became shutdowns. No, your incredible work was genuine. Every safety improvement, every cost reduction, every process innovation came from your expertise and dedication, but we documented the leadership response. Would they nurture excellence or punish it? Today, we got our answer. I unlocked my bottom desk drawer and pulled out a folder that had arrived that morning via secure courier. Federal Express, signature required, return address from a law firm in Columbus. This isn't a pep talk about persevering through tough times. This is an exit strategy with a guarantee. You're quitting? Finn O'Connor's voice cracked. He'd been working maintenance schedules around his daughter's soccer games for 3 years, never missing critical repairs. I'm evolving, I said. And I'm inviting all of you to join me. The folder contained something I'd never seen in 22 years of manufacturing. A fully funded autonomous division proposal, backed by Tegan herself, with positions for my entire team at 35% above our current salaries. Not promises or projections, signed contracts with equity stakes. She's creating a specialized manufacturing division to develop what this plant keeps squashing. Advanced safety systems, predictive maintenance protocols, quality control innovations. She wants proven performers who understand that excellence isn't a threat to be managed. The energy in the room transformed from defeat to cautious electricity, like when the main power grid kicks back online after an outage. What's stopping the same thing from happening there? Sage Williams asked, always thinking 3 steps ahead. She'd redesigned our entire logistics flow to eliminate bottlenecks, saving thousands in transport costs. Ownership structure, I explained. We'd each hold equity stakes, and the operating agreement has specific protections against penalizing high performance. Plus, we'd be developing systems for external clients, not just internal politics. Vale Anderson, who'd been silent until now, looked skeptical. She ran process engineering like a Swiss watch, every variable measured and optimized. Why didn't she just fix the problem here? She's on the board. Corporate culture is harder to change than worn bearing assemblies, I said. The board sees quarterly numbers, not daily operations. They know something's wrong because innovation keeps stalling, but they can't identify the exact failure point. Tegan realized it would be faster to extract the talent and rebuild than to repair what's corroded here. This is a lot to process, Liv Murphy said, rubbing her temples. She'd been managing materials flow with mathematical precision, never a shortage or surplus. I understand this isn't a decision you make during a lunch break. Take the weekend, read the proposal, ask questions, talk to your families, but whatever you decide, keep this confidential until we move forward. As they filed out, thoughtful but shaken, Felix lingered behind. The man could diagnose equipment problems by sound alone, Fix things that other engineers said were impossible. You knew this was coming, he said quietly. That's why you've been so calm lately, taking notes during every meeting, backing up documentation. I suspected Ellis would escalate, but I needed to see how far he'd go, and if they'd rewarded us instead of punishing us, we would have stayed and built something amazing here. I shrugged, checking the pressure gauge on my desk compressor out of habit. Ellis made the choice for us. The weekend passed in a blur of phone calls and kitchen table conversations. Manufacturing families don't make decisions lightly. These are people with mortgages, kids in college, retirement plans tied to pension funds. You don't just walk away from 20 years of seniority because your boss is an idiot. But by Sunday night, something remarkable had happened. Monday morning, 10 of my 12 team members confirmed they were joining me. 2 couldn't risk the change. Knox had his dad in assisted living medical bills that required steady insurance. Ash was 2 years from full retirement benefits. I respected their decisions and promised to help them transfer to other departments where they might avoid Ellis's retaliation. Then I submitted 10 resignation letters simultaneously at exactly 8 a.m. Ellis's reaction was immediate. An emergency meeting was called within the hour. Conference room B again, the same place he'd delivered his punishment speech just 3 days earlier. Whatever they've offered, I'll match it, Ellis said, his usually composed face now flushed red as a temperature warning light. Name your price. Overtime premiums, shift differentials, safety bonuses. I studied him carefully across that metal table. It's not about money, Ellis. It's about recognizing excellence instead of punishing it for political convenience. This is about the workload adjustment, isn't it? That was just a motivational technique. Ellis backpedaled faster than a conveyor belt in reverse. Of course, there would have been bonuses eventually. Performance reviews, advancement opportunities. Eventually, I repeated, letting that word hang in the air like diesel exhaust. That's exactly the problem. You had a team delivering record safety performance, and your first instinct was punishment for making others look bad. When Ellis learned where we were going, desperation turned to raw anger. The kind that makes equipment operators dangerous around heavy machinery, a subsidiary. That's corporate sabotage, he hissed. Actually, I replied, keeping my voice level. It's the natural consequence of telling top performers their problems rather than assets. He leaned across the table, voice dropping to a whisper. The board will never approve this subsidiary. I'll make sure of it. I have relationships with every department head, and that's when I smiled for the first time in days. A genuine smile that made Ellis pull back like he'd touched a live wire. They already have. Unanimously. Turns out watching a division increase performance 300% only to be punished for it made quite an impression on people who understand manufacturing. His face drained of color like coolant from a cracked radiator. Yesterday's meeting was confidential. Not from board members, I replied. Tegan attended virtually through the conference system, heard every word of your punishment speech. Every dismissive comment about capacity utilization and plant harmony. Ellis gripped the table edge, knuckles white as fresh primer. You recorded that meeting? That's against company policy. Nobody recorded anything. Tegan was already monitoring operations quietly, watching how middle management handles top talent. She's been doing it for months, learning why innovation keeps stalling in departments that should be leading the industry. The realization hit him like a press malfunction. Every time he'd taken credit for our innovations, every instance of undermining safety improvements, every dismissive comment about worker suggestions, all witnessed by the woman who built this company from nothing. This is a misunderstanding, Ellis stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. I was implementing strategies from the Leadership Development Program, managing resources according to corporate guidelines. Which program suggests punishing excellence to maintain mediocrity? I asked, genuinely curious. His eyes darted around the room like a bearing searching for lubrication, finding nothing but friction. 2 weeks' notice is standard. I expect proper project transitions, complete documentation handovers. Remy cleared his throat. Our contracts only require 1 week for voluntary separation. We'll be thorough, but we're not staying 2 weeks to watch you dismantle everything we built. Ellis stood abruptly, chair scraping against concrete. I'll be speaking with legal about this arrangement. Don't expect this transition to be smooth. After he stormed out, the 10 of us looked at each other across that conference table, the magnitude of what we'd done settling in like settling dust after a controlled explosion. What now? Daphne asked, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She'd been training new hires on safety protocols for 6 years, never lost a single person to preventable accidents. Now we prepare for Ellis to prove exactly why we're leaving. I said, he won't make this easy. I wasn't wrong. The next 7 days became a masterclass in workplace sabotage. Access permissions mysteriously disappeared overnight. Safety documentation we needed for transition vanished from servers. Files we'd created over months simply wasn't there anymore when we logged in. Security started escorting us to bathrooms like we might steal proprietary secrets about toilet paper inventory. Badge readers that had worked for years suddenly couldn't recognize our cards. Equipment we'd been maintaining for months was suddenly off limits for final inspections. But the real escalation started on Wednesday. Felix cornered me by the main compressor bank, voice low under the machinery noise. Ellis has been calling suppliers. My contact at Midwest Steel called to check if we were really being terminated for safety violations. My wrench slipped on the pressure fitting I was checking. What did you tell him? The truth. That we're leaving because we got punished for delivering results. But Wade, Ellis is poisoning every relationship we've built. Suggesting we falsified safety reports, inflated cost savings, manipulated equipment data. This changed everything. We weren't just leaving with our skills and knowledge. We needed those supplier relationships to make the new division succeed. Without reliable material sources and equipment vendors, even the best safety protocols wouldn't matter. Team meeting at Sullivan's Diner after shift, I decided. Everyone needs to hear this. The diner across from the plant gate became our war room. 10 tired faces crowded around tables sticky with coffee rings and determination. The same place we'd celebrated our safety milestone just 2 months earlier. Ellis is escalating beyond workplace politics, I began without preamble. He's systematically undermining our professional relationships with suppliers and vendors. Can he do that? Liv asked, stirring sugar into coffee that was already bitter enough. Legally, it's dangerous territory, said Knox, who'd worked with contracts before moving to materials handling, but it'll be subtle. Raised eyebrows pointed questions about why an entire team left suddenly, questions about our integrity. So what do we do? Felix asked. We need those supplier relationships. Half our innovations came from working directly with equipment manufacturers, understanding their capabilities. We adapt, I said. Ellis thinks manufacturing runs on relationships, not performance metrics. Let's prove him half right. What does that mean? Ash looked confused, still processing that his 20 years of loyalty had bought him exactly nothing. It means we call every key supplier tonight, not to steal business that violates our non-compete clauses. We call to say goodbye professionally, to thank them for partnerships, to wish them success with future projects. And when they ask why we're leaving, Kira pressed. We tell the truth, I said simply. Not to damage Ellis or the company, but because it's factual. We achieved record safety performance, and we're told excellence created political problems. We found an opportunity where innovation is valued instead of punished. That's risky, Sage said, ever the cautious engineer. Less risky than letting Ellis control the narrative completely. I countered. We know these suppliers personally. They've seen our work quality. They understand the difference between politics and performance. I took the 3 most critical accounts, including Apex Steel Systems, our largest equipment supplier. Their procurement director, Adira Patel, had worked with me for 8 years, she answered on the second ring. Wade, everything okay? You never call after 6 p.m. I took a breath, watching traffic flow past the diner window. Workers heading home to families, just like I should be. I'm calling with personal news. Today was my last day at the plant. Silence stretched long enough for me to wonder if the connection had dropped. What happened? She finally asked. You just received that industry safety recognition last month. The plant's injury rate is the lowest in the region. I explained briefly, sticking to facts without editorial commentary. When I finished, Adira was quiet again, processing implications. That explains the strange call I got from Ellis this afternoon, she said slowly. He mentioned departmental restructuring for improved vendor relations. I assumed someone was getting promoted to better coordinate with suppliers. What else did he say? That your team was being redistributed to optimize vendor partnerships, that we'd be assigned more experienced contacts. Adira paused, and I could hear computer keys clicking. He strongly suggested your group couldn't handle the complexity of large-scale procurement relationships. Despite expecting this, hearing confirmation felt like a punch to the gut. 22 years of building trust reduced to corporate character assassination. Where are you going next? Adira asked. I hesitated. watching a maintenance truck pull into the plant parking lot. I can't solicit business directly, but I can tell you I'm joining a new manufacturing division with most of my team. Interesting, she said. Very interesting. Ellis is visiting tomorrow morning to introduce my new contact person. Perhaps you and I should have breakfast before that meeting. By midnight, similar conversations had played out across 3 counties. 6 suppliers had requested meetings with us before committing to their new plant contacts. It wasn't poaching if they sought us out first. The next morning as I headed to meet Adira, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Is this Wade Garrett? Yes. Who's calling? Julian Pierce. Board of Directors, we need to meet immediately. My coffee turned to acid in my stomach. May I ask what this is regarding? Ellis has filed formal complaints accusing you and your team of supplier theft, corporate espionage, and violation of non-compete agreements. These are serious allegations, Mr. Garrett. They're also completely false. I said, pulling over to focus on the conversation. That remains to be determined. The board is convening an emergency session at 11 a.m. Your presence is required. The board meeting felt like walking into a foundry furnace. 12 stern faces lined the massive conference table, with Ellis seated at one end wearing a satisfied smirk like he'd just solved a complex engineering problem. Julian Pierce gestured to an empty chair at the opposite end. Mr. Garrett, thank you for joining us on short notice. I nodded, scanning the room. Tegan was absent. My one ally, nowhere to be seen. We've received disturbing allegations, Julian continued, sliding a folder across the polished table. Mr. Crane claims you and your team have violated multiple contract clauses. I opened the folder. Inside were printouts of call logs, meeting schedules, and supplier emails, all highlighted and annotated to paint the worst possible picture. Ellis claims you orchestrated systematic supplier defection. Julian explained that you used confidential information to solicit business for your new venture. I closed the folder carefully. That's categorically false. You deny contacting suppliers after hours last night? Ellis interjected, leaning forward like a prosecutor. I don't deny calling suppliers to inform them of my departure. That's professional courtesy, not solicitation. And these breakfast meetings scheduled with 6 major suppliers. Ellis pushed a printed calendar across the table. Just coincidence? Those meetings were requested by the suppliers after learning of my departure. Ellis laughed, a sound like grinding metal. You expect the board to believe they spontaneously requested meetings without any prompting from you? Yes, I said simply. Because it's the truth. Julian cleared his throat. Regardless of who initiated contact, these meetings create the appearance of impropriety. With respect, I countered, informing suppliers of departure and accepting their invitations doesn't violate contract terms. Our non-compete prevents actively soliciting business for 12 months. It doesn't prevent suppliers from seeking us out. Ellis's smile faltered like a machine hitting resistance. She's manipulating language to justify theft of company relationships. What relationships have I stolen? I asked directly. Supplier contacts, proprietary processes, team members. Ellis replied. Supplier relationships don't belong to the company. I said evenly. They're built on trust between individuals, and people aren't equipment to be owned and transferred. Nora Fleming, the finance director, leaned forward. Mr. Garrett, while your point about relationship ownership has merit, the timing appears suspicious. 10 resignations submitted simultaneously, followed by immediate supplier outreach. I understand how it appears, I acknowledged, but consider our perspective. After delivering unprecedented safety results, we were told our reward was punishment, doubled workloads with no compensation. When we resigned, Ellis began contacting suppliers, mischaracterizing our departures. We had no choice but to correct false information. So you admit coordinating this response? Ellis pounced. I admit to leading my team through a difficult transition that you made unnecessarily hostile. The boardroom door opened and Tegan Walsh entered, moving with determined purpose despite her age. The energy shifted immediately, like main power coming back online. Sorry I'm late, she said, her voice carrying authority despite her frail appearance. Construction on Highway 33 was terrible. Julian stood. Miss Walsh, we weren't expecting you. Evidently not, she replied, taking a seat midway down the table. But when I heard about this emergency session regarding the team I've been personally monitoring, I thought my perspective might be relevant. Ellis's expression tightened like an overtorqued bolt. With all due respect, Tegan, you've been semi-retired for years. You may not have complete operational context. I've been semi-retired, not unconscious, Tegan retorted sharply, earning suppressed smiles from board members. And I've been watching this situation develop for months. She turned to the board. What Ellis isn't telling you is that I personally recruited Wade and his team for a special project after witnessing systematic suppression of innovation. Ellis's face reddened. That's completely outside normal protocols. Let me finish. Tegan cut him off. The board approved the Autonomous Manufacturing Division 3 months ago. It's documented in the minutes you apparently didn't review before convening this tribunal. Several board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Legal cleared the transition plan, Tegan continued, including the supplier communication protocol that Wade followed precisely. I wasn't informed of any autonomous division, Ellis insisted. No, you weren't, Tegan agreed. Because your management approach was what we were evaluating. The room fell silent as implications settled like metal shavings. Even if this division was approved, Ellis said desperately, sliding another document across the table, these safety metrics prove systematic deception. The supposed 300% improvement was statistical manipulation. I felt my stomach drop. He was attacking our core achievements, our professional credibility. That's impossible, I protested. Our numbers were independently verified through OSHA protocols. By whom? Ellis challenged. Your own team members. Hardly independent verification. Ellis smugly pushed forward spreadsheets showing our projects underperforming, safety targets missed, cost overruns. None matched reality, but the fabrication looked convincing. These are falsified, I said, disbelief evident in my voice. They're from our central database, Ellis countered smoothly. Entered by your supervisors last week. That's when understanding clicked. The missing access permissions during our final week. The mysterious system maintenance that locked us out of safety dashboards. Ellis hadn't just been delaying our transition. He'd been rewriting history. Tegan studied the documents with engineer's precision. These don't match reports I've reviewed with respect. Ellis said, you've been seeing summary presentations. These are raw operational data. Board members looked uncertainly between us. Without access to original documentation, how could I prove systematic falsification? My phone vibrated. A text from Felix. Check email immediately. I glanced down to see dozens of incoming messages with attachments. May I respond to these allegations with evidence? I asked Julian, who nodded reluctantly. When our team noticed unusual system activities last week, we became concerned about data integrity. Each supervisor independently archived all safety documentation, supplier correspondence, and performance metrics. Not company property, just personal work records. Ellis's confidence wavered visibly. That's impossible under our security protocols. Actually, it's encouraged backup procedure, I said, connecting my laptop to the projection system. The employee handbook specifically recommends maintaining personal work documentation. I projected a side-by-side comparison. Ellis's doctored reports versus our archived originals, complete with authentication timestamps and system logs. These records show actual safety metrics, I explained, scrolling through irrefutable evidence. More importantly, they show exactly when and how official records were altered this week. The temperature seemed to drop. Board members leaned forward, expressions hardening as they realized the manipulation attempt. Julian turned to Ellis, voice dangerously quiet. You falsified company safety records to discredit departing employees. Ellis's composure shattered. They were leaving anyway, taking suppliers, destroying department cohesion because you punished excellence, Tegan interrupted. The very behavior this company was founded to reward. It wasn't punishment, Ellis insisted desperately. It was strategic resource management. By doubling workloads without compensation, Nora asked incredulously. This meeting is adjourned. Julian said coldly, Ellis, remain here. Everyone else may leave. Over the following months, our autonomous division exceeded every projection. Without bureaucratic constraints, innovation flourished. Our first major safety system launched ahead of schedule and under budget. Those breakfast meetings? 6 became 15, then 24. Not because we pursued suppliers, but because reputation spreads in manufacturing communities. 1 year later, I received an unexpected invitation. Keynote speaker at the National Manufacturing Safety Conference. Topic: Leading Excellence Without Fear. At our anniversary celebration, Tegan raised a glass to our team, now equity partners rather than hourly employees. To recognizing excellence instead of punishing it, Felix added. And to Wade, who made one call that changed everything, Daphne said. I smiled, remembering that first coffee meeting. Actually, she called me. I just answered. If you've made it this far in my story, you probably recognize something familiar. Maybe you've worked for an Ellis Crane. Maybe you've been punished for doing great work. Maybe you've watched good people get crushed by bad management. Here's what I learned. Excellence should never be apologized for. Your worth isn't determined by people who can't recognize it. And sometimes the best response to being undervalued isn't fighting the system, but building a better one. If this resonates with you, share it. Your experience might inspire someone else to make that call when opportunity knocks. Remember, you don't have to stay where you're not valued.